My name's Mike Sly. I work for DNR as well. I work for the product sales and leasing division in Olympia, in the timber sales department. So DNR manages 3 million acres, and of that 3 million acres annually, we generate about $200 million revenue for trust land beneficiaries via our timber sale program. So I work for the timber sale program with the side of DNR that makes money. And so my role currently is chief check cruiser for DNR. So I manage about 8 cruisers statewide, from Cal Falls all the way down to Forks and all over the state. And those 8 cruisers are responsible for cruising and evaluating our timber sales that we bring to public auction every month. That's kind of one half of my job. My other half of the job is I'm the key marketing point of contact for DNR and do all of our timber sale appraisals every month. So I set the minimum bid value that the state is willing to accept for a timber sale that we sell. It's quite a big process. A lot of people work a lot of hours to bring a timber sale to auction. It's really rewarding, and we do sell one, and the whole cradle to grave that follows. But anyways, today kind of wanted to structure my conversation a little bit about what I've done in the past. I'm pretty new to DNR. I've been here about 1.5 years. For the last 10 years, I was a log buyer for private manufacturers across the state. But now I'm a public resource, so I've kind of given you all a tell-all of my experience in the private world, and what I would have wanted to have known if I was a private landowner, and a landowner yourself or the landowners you work with in your current roles. So finally, I'll just circle it all back together. Kind of log marketing, selling logs to make money is great, but doing restoration projects is also a major goal of DNR and a lot of the landowners you work with. So we'll get started here. Maybe.
So Mike, could you move the microphone please to you?
Go.
Put on that.
So yeah, I kind of got a quieter voice than Jake, maybe. So, does that work?
Just switch on the top.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
And click back on the top.
Okay, so these are some common small landowner questions that I've run into across in my years. And I'm sure many of you have had these same questions asked to you before. How much are my trees worth? Do I need a permit? When is it worth selling logs? How do I do it? How do I harvest the trees? And are there taxes on timber? These are all really common questions that a lot of people have that I myself would have had if I hadn't had this experience that I've had. I think this is kind of a very bold statement, but I'll say it. I think that the general knowledge amongst Washington citizens is pretty low when it comes to log marketing and the value of our trees and what things are worth. A prime example of that, which I'm sure we've all seen, is a classic sign on the side of the road that says "cash for trees." And those individuals are pretty much capitalizing on that lack of knowledge of the general public. Your trees are worth money, whether you know it or someone does. And so kind of a theme we'll keep touching on is I do encourage a healthy skepticism if you are thinking about selling logs or helping someone sell logs, just because there is a lot of money in it, and there's money involved in anything. Nefarious characters do show up. So I'll highlight some of that today. But anyways, yeah, so we'll circle back on this picture at the very end, but this is a private landowner's logs in Port Angeles I dealt with 3 or 4 years ago. So we'll go over kind of some general terms. So how are logs bought and sold? Logs are bought and sold by the MBF or ton. So MBF would be 1,000 board feet. If the M is the room, the board feet is the BF. So often written as 1 MBF equals 1,000 board feet, and 1,000,000 board feet is 1,000 MBF. So those are kind of, from a common point of view, you're really confused when you see those numbers, in all honesty, because they don't really make sense to me. We're saying 1,000 board feet and we're writing 1, but it's just the Roman play into it, and this is how things are traded. The tonnage aspect comes into play when you're talking really small logs or pole, for logs, slash, that kind of stuff, that they're just gonna grind chips out of. So in general, logs are scaled by via a third-party log scaling bureau. So when you do sell a log to a mill, it's not like the mill gets to tell you, oh, this is how much wood you sold me, because in the scheme of things, you don't want the person's buying it, telling you how much is there. So it's a way for mills to justify the accuracy of the delivered volume to a destination. So all these third-party scaling bureaus have popped up across the state. There's a dozen of them, and they're not paid by the mills. They're employed by the mills, but they're not. They have no incentive to fudge number and delivery or anything like that. So kind of how scaling works. I say scaling, I don't mean weighing, measuring. So you take the small end diameter of the log inside the bark, we'll measure at the smallest point, and then picture is to say it's 12 inches on one small end. I don't know, some big end that's 40 feet long. You're going to picture a 12-inch cylinder running directly through that log, disregarding the fiber that's outside that 12 inches on the other side of the log. So it's kind of a carrot example. We cut a carrot in half. A lot of the end diameters are closer together than if they, a whole carrot tapered to a tree. We'll talk today. We're just going to talk about domestic log markets. DNR only deals in domestic log markets, but there is an export log market prevalent in Western Washington, not so much Eastern Washington. Pretty much at any port of entry, there's some sort of export log going to China or Japan in Western Washington. But we'll just focus on domestic mills today and domestic products, just keep it really high level here. And then briefly, east side, west side log scaling rules, depending on if you're in Eastern Washington, the west side, the short log versus long log scale. East side meaning if you deliver a 40-foot log, they're going to scale it in 20-foot sections, whether cut it into a 20-footer or not. They won't scale anything past 20 feet in Eastern Washington. Whereas if you deliver a west side 40-foot log to a mill, you're going to get that small end diameter run throughout that whole 40-foot log, and that's your volume. So kind of a easier way to look at this. This is a Scrivener log volume table with preferred lengths for a mill. So it could be any diameter, but these are lengths, and this mill is scaling for, but these numbers are set in stone, been set in stone since the 70s when this was created. But so for example, 12-inch diameter, 40-foot log is 200 board feet. So if you have one log on your landing and it's 200 board feet and it's 12 inch by 40, that's how much volume is there. And again, one MVF is 1,000 board feet. So it's gonna, you're gonna have 5 of those to make 1,000 board feet. Kind of how it's done gross, but the other job of the scaler is to determine defect and in the log, the history of the log's life, like a lot of things that could happen to it that affect how the movement would actually occur. So that's the primary job of the scaler. All these numbers are preloaded into tablets that they all use. They just plug in the small diameters that they scale on small, and then they account for sweep, cross crack, spike notes, oversized knots, all that kind of stuff to get your net volume. And again, it's net MBF. So back to the MBF, so bought and sold by the MBF. So if you ever hear forward prices from the landowner street, it's typically an MBF. So DNR connects, part of my job is conducting monthly price surveys between all the domestic mills in Western Washington and Eastern Washington and relative Idaho and Oregon mills. I think we send out about 42 different surveys out every month, gather data. It's really useful, but you kind of see a trends here. So you go back to 2020, and this is pretty narrow window in the scheme of things, but we'll just point out a couple of things here. You can see here's the start of COVID right here. This is dug for 2 soft. So this is a 12-inch plus diameter log in knee length. My survey back in February 2020. was estimating about $625 a thousand. Yeah. For the box. You can see COVID happened, everyone got really scared, price surveys went down 517 here. And then you had everything that followed. We saw all the way up until Q1 of 2022. For two saw, and you can find it's the 12-inch diameter for again, you can see here we are back in 2023. We're kind of coming back down below here, but again, still relatively high. To where we were, real COVID boom here. So what does that really mean? We'll get into that later, lumber prices and all that. But anyways, this is Dugborough on the top. Let's come off on the bottom. This is West Side Price Survey. I also do an East Side Price Survey. Here is Western Red Cedar top and red alder at the bottom. So kind of 4 primary species of economic value in Washington. Red cedar is highly volatile. As you can tell, part of my crazy looking graph here is that there's very few cedar mills left in Washington. So if I don't receive a price survey, it really skews my data here, which also plays into the log market. Less people fighting for a log prices. They kind of have a fixed pricing regime, but at the end of the day, there's really not that much cedar available to keep those mills running. So prices do remain relatively high, $2,000 a thousand. It was pretty high, and again, that was high to the pandemic there. And again, here we are, Q2 2023, about $1,500, $1,486 was my May price survey. And so if you're a small landowner, you say, okay, that's great. How do you know that information? Well, again, DNR is a public resource. I publish these price surveys that I do every month.
So that dollar is 5 40 feet long with a 12-inch diameter. Assuming the knots and all that.
Gross, that is what you will get. But we're going to get into the costs and everything. That's the whole presentation. The CBC cedar is obviously way higher. So if you have a cedar log, hold it close because it's worth money. Anyway, so I do publish these log price surveys. These graphs I just showed you are available. Find the same link. The link Jake mentioned there, the Small Forest Landowners portal. They're updated monthly. It's a great first place to start if I was planning. Look at the sell logs. Encourage anyone who's interested to first do research on them, figure out what log prices are doing rather than hire a contractor who's in the know and have them tell you. Because again, healthy skepticism is wise. This is kind of an interesting photo. Something that might be interesting. This is Cascade Hardwoods in Chehalis, Washington. And this is Sierra Pacific in Shelton. This mill is probably like 80 years old. And there's 14 guys here pulling dry lumber for cabinet grade alder. So these are random width boards. And they pull the higher grades up front, lower grades in the back as it goes down the line. Very labor intensive. Where you have your newest mill in Western Washington. I don't see a single person on that whole floor. There's about 3 guys running the show right in here. Highly mechanized. This mill on the left uses about 35 logs a day of alder. This one uses about 140. For perspective, that would be 140 trucks in a row. 3 miles worth of log trucks. So it's industry at its finest. So now we're kind of circle back into lumber futures, which also play into this whole scheme of things, what are logs worth. Again, you can see this is much more zoomed out. You kind of see averages here between 250 to 500 bucks MDF for finished lumber. It's kind of historical average. And you can see right here, you have COVID. So I'll take a quick survey. Who who during the lockdown went to Home Depot and bought a 2x4 or piece of plywood? Well, you're part of the issue right here. So it's really interesting. It's a really cool case study to look into, but typically lumber indexes and lumber futures are typically correlate with housing starts, specifically single family homes. Whereas COVID did have a little bit of a housing spike, but the primary driver of what you're seeing here is big box stores. So Lowe's, Home Depot, astronomical prices. If you zoom this out, these numbers are so high, you wouldn't even be able to tell this line if we zoomed out. It's 5 times what they're paying or what they're getting today for the same 2x4. It's kind of interesting. And so you see these prices. This is what the mill sells the board to Home Depot for, sells it to you, and they're getting what I'm telling you is 5 to 10 times the price they're getting today. But look back at the price survey here, and logs were worth the same in COVID as they are today. So what does that mean? Well, that's corporate greed at its finest right there. Many mills were printing wheelbarrows of money during COVID, and many industries were as well. But you can kind of see we're back down to it now, and it's still high relative to where we were in 2012, but still fair enough. Again, back to the housing numbers, you kind of see COVID here. Starts right here. We have a slight boom, but nothing too crazy in the scheme of this graph here. And then look at the Great Recession we have right here. You don't even notice that on the price futures I just showed you. So this little spike, very, very insignificant in the scheme of things. And again, it was the big box demand that drove those lumber prices to the roof. The DIY boom across America, the world, really showed its colors and power during COVID. So 5 elements determine market value. Kind of talk about pricing and then go over your question there, sir. What they pay me at the end of the day. So value of the product to the end user, that's kind of the prices we were just talking about. Price survey, cost of producing the product, okay, logging the product, getting the product from your trucking, and then all the costs associated with production and risk. So species plus log quality equals delivered log value. Yeah, I'm talking mostly Western Washington here. You can see these trees here. This is a DNR timber sale. It's about a 65, 70-year-old stand versus another DNR timber sale, 35-year rotation tree from. We're talking 1,000 board feet. So 1,000 board feet of this is the same as this, but 1,000 board feet of this is worth a lot more than 1,000 board feet of this. Common sense really applies with log quality. Typically age, knot size, taper, they're all contributing factors to higher quality logs, which in turn result in higher quality prices. And again, this is all species separate. So your red cedar is far above both of these together. But again, 1,000 board feet, 1,000 board feet. And all the and so back into quality, again, on my published log price survey, besides the graphs you saw earlier, you can see I surveyed mills for what they're paying for the higher quality stuff. So SM and better would be a 16-inch plus diameter log, really clean, hardly any knots. Typically, it's your 80, 90-year-old style log. They're making custom beams for homes in California, that kind of product. Whereas your 4-saw, chip and saw, 3-saw, or smaller, really could be 35-year-old stuff. If they can make a 2x4 out of it, they're going to pay that. So it's really quite a variation based on quality. But again, I'd encourage you to do research, and again, common sense really applies. And are you logging a 35-year-old tree-farm type log, or you're logging something that's been around for hundreds of years? There's differences here. I will add that diameter is not larger diameter is not always better, contrary to popular belief. Mills are recognized small ones more as time progresses. Those larger diameters are becoming less and less available. And for mills to have the carrying capacity to manufacture those things, it costs no more money. So they scaled down. I showed you before the Sierra Pacific Shelton mill. They built it 3 or 4 years ago. It can't handle a bigger 22-inch diameter. So take that into perspective. Your logs get too big, you eventually start going out. If you're not falling into these specialty mills, trying to cut, fancy beams and stuff, prices really go down because there's less and less places that will accept your logs.
Utilities, the stuff that's turned into chips. And
So utility, like I said earlier, is typically bought by the ton, but I convert everything to an NBF price here, just for simple terms. Camp run, you see that up there too. So that if a log buyer came out to your stand of timber and they say, I'll buy everything camp runs, they're gonna get the good, the bad, and the ugly for your whole stands coming average price. They go for a run. But it's really just an average of all these numbers combined because they're gonna get some good and some bad. And again, it's some of these are, we have about, I think 35 different mills can make prices every month for these numbers here. So really, really useful, and especially for small forest landowners. I point it in this direction, just because it's an available resource. It's out there, really easy to find. But cedar, there's, like I said earlier, there's very few mills. You can see the little red. Probably got one quote that one for cedar. So it's all relative to what's actually up there. So that kind of my first step. I would encourage any landowner to do is do their own research, figure out what the log market is, what prices are, find resources like this as far as evaluating gross what you're. Second step, always get many of you know what a forest practice permit is. $100 fee for small forest land. Key stipulation we'll talk about in a bit. Trees within 175 feet of a permanent structure that is frequented by people and not considered forest land and not covered under the FPA. It's a key point. This is a deal for yourself to add that FPA that their structures around. All mills except permitted FPA permitted logs. Contrary to the belief, mills don't buy just any log that shows up at a mill. They're all regulated by sustainability certificates that they hold, and they have to show transaction history on the they bring to their mill. So forest practices are great. This log came from this permit, and then to look back and look at this permit log to get this website. So it's a really useful tool. Any mill will accept a forest practice. Landowner assistance is available. Reference the portal a bit. Some municipalities offer FPA permits like clearing permits as well. Stipulation of the forest practice permits you're required to enforce. Back to my 175-foot stipulation there. Hazard tree removal really falls into the realm of the small forest land. Trying to log 20 trees around their house type of thing. So again, DNR doesn't issue permits for anything 175 feet from the structure. This WAC covers hazard trees. For example, if you're in Thurston County, a permit is not required to remove trees within a tree length of an existing permanent structure if all trees are outside the paper area. So if you're a small forest landowner in Thurston County and you have hazard trees that could hit your house, clear them. Thurston County GIS website, look up the critical areas map. If your trees are outside that critical area, or to the packet. The catcher is not all mills buy hazard trees because it factors in a whole other realm of risk. So if the log buyer isn't available to visit your site and they're taking your word for it, if those trees are hazard trees, that's where things get really shady really quick, and stolen logs, that kind of stuff can happen. So not always the easiest thing, but maybe you can work with a log buyer on that, and typically buy if they visit the site. So after you get your permit, then suggest you to find a logger. So this would be kind of more, if you're trying to log in 2-3 acres around your house, 5 acres or more, you'd hire a logger. If you wanted to do it yourself, and more than capable of doing it yourself, and costs or whatever you make it with a chainsaw and pickup truck, I guess. But typical price is to west side prices, man, $90 1,000, $250 1,000, really shows the variability. Obviously, if you hire a contractor, you say, here's a 2 month worth of work coming on my property, they're gonna give you a much better price than if you tell them, here's 20 trees I'm going to come log, because they have to move the same amount of equipment to do the same amount of work. So it all factors in there. Cable logging, highway suspension, highly expensive. This would hardly ever happen in small forest land property unless they have even 5+ acres or more to get done. So ground base would be, flatter, 45% slope or less. Again, cost increase with volume per acre, size of the project, time of year, all the other variables you can think of it, working with any kind of contractor. So where does the landowner find certified loggers, or who should they contact to find loggers? It's a really good resource. This is not available on DNR's website, but thought I'd show it. It's the Washington State Contract Loggers Association, certified master loggers. There's 834 certified professionals statewide. They're all SFI compliant, and pretty much what that means is they're required to do continuing education and take classes to maintain their certification, which includes best management practices as far as delivery to streams and everything like that. So say you live in let's say Chehalis, Washington, you're a small forest landowner wanting to log logs. I would highly encourage you to use this website. This is a list of everyone that's certified Chehalis chapter, contact information. Really useful. All these people are typically owner operators, and again, certified. Briefly go over what the certification is. So if you think about a logger, a lot of loggers are longtime loggers, been loggers. So their father was a logger, their father's father was a logger, and all that kind of stuff. And the generational knowledge of logging hasn't changed really, but the practices we do in the woods has drastically changed. And so if these people are educated on what current practices are, you're not logging the same you were 50 years ago with the forest practice permits and everything like that. So really, all these 834 people are the most up-to-date professional loggers available in Washington. And DNR highly supports this program. Another consideration, road construction. Not typically huge for small forest landowners. Often there is already existing roads. So DNR Stringer Bridge we built up in Port Angeles. It's a highly expensive project here. There's 5 of these to be exact. To get to the standard of millions of dollars worth of road construction to log the trees on this one. Whereas your more typical small landowner, an old existing road that was used the last time they logged it in rotation, it just needs to be opened up. But actually, I'm not going to give you any range of prices on this because it could be anything you can imagine. Final thing is trucking. The trips per day, length of haul, C miles, and length of haul A miles. So C miles would be how many off-road highway miles do we have to travel with the truck. So if you go over 10 C miles, it's getting a little bit out there, and the price of trucking goes up and up for that. A miles is length of haul on the highway. For West Side log trucks, typically they require about $1,000 a day to stay in business. So this is very, very high level trucking costs, but you can consider they could get 4 truck loads out of your property a day. Roughly, they're going to need about $250 a load to make it pay. But again, if you only have 1 or 2 loads, you need to be aware of that, because if the logger tells you, oh, I only get 1 load, charges you $1,000, the truck driver charges you $1,000, and he takes your load and then he goes and picks up 3 more later day, you don't know about that, you just got taken advantage of. So again, healthy skepticism, just pointing out some things I wish more small landowners. So where are the mills? This is really zoomed out map here, but there's a lot of them. The west side versus east side, you kind of see the little line right here. Logs rarely ever go this way. I don't think there's any logs that go this way. Typically logs over here, go over here. Right between all. So competition dictates market. obviously there's a lot more competition in Western Washington. It's a little bit misleading because this also includes refinishing mills, which don't accept whole logs, but they'll buy 2x4s or 4x4s from the Sierra Pacific and treat them and make pressure treated boards. And it's also a mill on this map. But, some of your big players, just for kicks and giggles here, would be up here in Eastern Washington, really the core. You have Boggin Brothers, Boise Cascade, IFG, Potlatch. Dictate the market in Eastern Washington. Over here, you have your Sierra Pacifics, and 4 or 5 mills in Western Washington. You have your Hampton Lumbers, they have 3 or 4 mills in Washington. And you have your accountants, specialty mills, your beam mills, your veneer mills, your CLT mills, all that kind of stuff that was over there. So the specialty products really come into play in Western Washington. But again, once you find your contractors, kind of the 4th step would be where the log's going to go. And your log contractor typically will understand the flow of things and where things go. If you live down in the kayaking county, your logs are 99% of the time going to go up to equity shelving, just because the market's in market. So just simple things like that, contractor will be able to. But worth pointing out here. Final thing, after you get all that else done, you talk about timber tax. Everyone loves taxes, so I couldn't think of a more complicated way the Department of this, unfortunately, but that's how it's done. So timber tax is any amount of harvest, or any amount of harvest is harvested timber is subject to timber tax is reported quarterly at 5% of stumpage value. So back to what we were saying. Delivered value versus stumpage value. So their gross value versus your net value. And so what you have here is Department of Revenue uses their own price surveys, including come up with these numbers. So let's say you live in Pierce County, Washington, and you wanted to log Douglas fir for the months of January 1st to June 30th, 2023. Number 5 here, or number 4 here. They would charge you 5% tax based on $627 a thousand. So what's 5% of that? That's what your tax would be per income. There's some tax breaks if you are doing highway suspension or cable logging. Prices do come down because of costs. And there's also the tax credit. So if you are small forest land, anyone included, because the forest practice has a protection for water resources of any kind, you're eligible for this 0.8% tax break, so it's 4.2% instead of 5%. But always call before you're logging, get a tax reporting number. And so pretty much that says they'll give you an ID for your permit for your property, and you have to call them and tell them how much volume to move. They give you the best information, but it's all part of the process, and it's best to have that number before you log rather than after. And a stumpage valuation, what's that? So stumpage valuation represents the value of a tree standing in the woods and accounts for all costs associated with that specific tree. Logging, trucking, taxes, fees, everything. Delivered log value is the gross value of log delivered to a mill. Delivered log value is the number you hear from the street. I'm gonna pay $1,000 for Doug fir, $2,000 $1,000 for Western red cedar. Your stumpage valuation is the number that it's the number we're paying. So say factor in these costs, what tree is gonna net at the end of the day after I pay trucking, taxes, everything. That's your stumpage. Stumpage is used for taxes. Delivered value is used for price surveys and market valuation and all that stuff, because mills aren't paying that typically. You're paying that, and they're paying you a gross price at the end of the day. So yeah, it's a really complicated process, but just eye level here. So this is a quick log valuation exercise I thought I'd do, and again, I'll bring it back to this picture I showed you first. This was a load of logs in Port Angeles I was associated with in my private years, and it stuck with me. Just highlighting, like I said, the lack of the general population. We built this road through this landowner's property. Part of the road use permit I used to log the property was I had to harvest their trees in the right of way to get to the property. And leave their trees lay. So in tree length form, they were just cut off at the butt and then the side of the road. They were going to deal with them themselves. So this is what was left when we were done. And so what ended up happening, is the landlord approached me towards the end of the project and we were done back here and he said, hey, there's not enough there to be worth my time, was the quote I got. And this, I can't even tell you how many times this happens and people don't realize it. So let's just do a quick exercise here. If I have a small landowner in the situation, this is what I would do. My slides monthly log survey. 1486 for Western Red Cedar here would be the delivered gross value. There was roughly 1 truckload of 5 MDF of wood here. I was paying the logging contractor $1,000 a log. This is relatively low. This is really close. It's only $65 in MDF. And there wasn't a road construction in this because I had already got to go through Atlantic. Taxes are pretty high on Western Red Cedar, 6790 in this situation. So if you factor in your stumpage valuation for those trees, be it that they're inside of the ditch, no stump still, was $12,600, $1,263. So if you do that times 5 MDF, it's about $6,315. Unaware they had, and to hand it over to me because they didn't think it was worth their time. I'm a good individual, and so obviously I educated them, paid them, everything went right. But this situation occurs time and time again, and not just in small land facets, but in big corporations. There's Costco developments where developers get these contracts to do dirt work projects in 100-acre parcels of nothing but 90 for the Costco corporation, massive billion-dollar corporation, sees those trees as weeds and tells the dirt work contractor, hey, you deal with the trees, you can have them. Just pull the stumps and give me my flat piece of earth so I can build my $1 billion Costco. And well, the dirt work guy just came up with $2-3 million for trees. It's a really big industry. People don't understand what goes involved, but it's not. I'm just trying to highlight here. It's not just the small end. This seems to be a reoccurring thing. It's large landowners and corporations, and so I would encourage them to take a step back, evaluate their logs, understand what they got, know what's worth money. These trees are old; they're worth something, and not wasting time. This is just a quick little exercise, but does that kind of make sense to everyone as far as costs from start to finish here on this little project here? Anyone have any questions on this one? Yeah.
So, it's a mix. Delivering trees, I'm just trying to be logs and workers, I just couldn't even give you one because it's mixed. There's cedar for and they were all different dimensions and different species, just in this down all together. So this is the approach for me to take with that kind of.
And you said you're on San Juan. I mean, that's kind of a tough game there, just for proximity of where you're at. There are mills that accept more than one species. So, say you're in San Juan, and there was cedar and Douglas fir and maybe some maple or something. Good luck to portages, for example. Portages hard. They cut cedar and alder maple. Directly across the street would be for Pacific. So they constantly give and take each other logs. They're just in proximity. So that would have been a good example for there. But again, every situation is different. We typically jump or bunch together whitewood, gram fir, hemlock, silver fir, all that stuff is just considered whitewood. And any mill that accepts whitewood will generally take all that stuff. Cedar is typically its own mill. The big player in Washington is Alta Forest Products for cedar. They really dictate the price of cedar at any given time. But yeah, so I mean, it's tough. I mean, I would have tried to make loads of each species if I could, whether that meant take a few extra, because that's gonna, obviously pay more if you sell it to a mill that doesn't technically want that wood. They'll still buy it off you, but at a discount because they're gonna have to handle it and ship it to someone who does want it. So it's called the sorting price you'll get for something like that. It's typically a couple $100 less than market value. But good question. But, yeah, so it's kind of really high level overview of the market here, but I think it's really worth all your time dealing with these small forests that you do deal with, and understanding the value of lots and what things are worth is meaningful. It's not all just about money, especially here at DNO. So that's kind of where we're gonna go next. But this $6,315 is significant for I'd say in Western Washington. So it's worth understanding what goes into it. But it's such a complicated process that again, your cash for trees signs that you see time and time again, and your letters you get in the mail as a small person, it says, hey, we're interested in your property, I want you to harvest some trees or something. Everyone's situations are just trying to take advantage of the complications and the complicated system that is log marketing. So the more general knowledge everyone has going into the situation, the more fair it typically can be.
So those same logs would go for about half that?
Exactly. Yeah. So especially when you have cedar, I mean, it doesn't take much, I mean, even at that, let's say it was only, 2,000 board feet, 2,000 MBF. That's enough cedar to still pay for the trucking and everything else and still deliver it, even though it's not a full load of logs. I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen a log truck on the road, it doesn't look full. It's the situation. Someone knows that it's worth what it is to truck it. So, yeah, I mean, cedar in particular definitely holds the most value.
It's the shortest thing.
So, yeah, it's a really good question. So we'll go back to your logs. So we'll go back to our Scrivener volume table. So you can see here, this is for an alder mill. So this is length. So they're not going to buy anything from you less than 16 feet unless it's 12-inch, unless it's 10-inch diameter and 12-foot long. So in this situation, 16 feet is typically the smallest length anyone can buy from you. All the most, they're cutting cabinet stuff. So length of the board isn't always the most important. Anything that doesn't make cabinet grade goes into a pallet stock, which is obviously short. So they're taking pretty small lengths there, but and you can see here your diameter small end. So they're topped out here at 30 inches. So typically they're talking maple, they're talking 30 inches, small in diameter. They don't want to buy it if it's bigger than that. You kind of see here, it's really hard to explain, but so when you're a small landowner in Western Washington, for logging logs, common sense would tell you that the shorter the log with the bigger diameter, that's the most board feet because there's less taper in the log versus a 40-foot log. Well, that is true. A constant give and take is played with them. So these prices that I've been sharing with you all, these are for delivered prices. So these are very random. But say you went to a Hampton tree farm from Hampton, Darrington or something, they give you a price sheet. And so they pay you $963 for a 40-foot 5-inch log. And because to them, 40-foot 5-inch log carries the most taper compared to a 12-inch 16-foot log. So, and that taper and that difference between, because they're not cutting 40-foot boards, they're going to take that 40-foot log and they're going to cut it into 8-foot blocks. And so every time that block gets bigger and bigger on the end, they're gaining volume that's excluded on that cylinder we talked about in the scaling diameter. So it's kind of this give and take. They'll pay you more for long logs because you get less scale, but you get less scale, you get paid less. So it's this really like, you know, battle with the play. And so when you see log trucks driving in the road, this is something people don't really realize is you do see some that are, you know, nothing but 40 footers from top to bottom. But in this scenario, that's not the case. And you have 40 footers wrapped around the bottom, and then you have all these short log stuff in the middle, and that's them trying to capitalize on that exact what we just talked about. They're trying to hit that sweet spot of what's the shortest, but yet enough that they'll pay me the most money. Point. But anyways, speed up here. So, yeah, this was an exercise. Again, another thing we're going to talk about is just to harvest. Anything you do in the woods with logging is very deadly. So, you know, this is a yard flipped over, Yakult, Washington. They're not supposed to be bent over like that. It's be standing straight up and down. Really dangerous situation, but something you have to consider a small animal. Moral of the story, your logs lose money. That money can often be used for, you know, more meaningful things than just your bank account. So I'll go over a quick little exercise here. So riparian restoration strategy here again. Talk about the financials, submitting a forest practice alternate plan. So this is kind of a really lengthy slide here, but moral of the story is, you know, most of Western Washington riparian areas that have been degraded at some point from logging activities. You know, and this is a very common picture you see walking in the west side stream. You have these maturing older dominating canopy right down to the stream edge, and you have pre-existing large stumps that indicate in previous years, previous harvests, there was large conifers all the way down the riparian edge. And so riparian restoration strategy is part of the HCP, and pretty much a strategy to market alder in riparian areas down to 25 feet. So they'll go in, remove all this alder, release these conifers that are being suppressed by the alder, and pretty much accelerate the process for that ecologically functioning, significant, more historical setting.
If you don't intervene, how long does it take?
Yeah, so alders are pioneer species, so that's really good at moving in and out, but it's going to die in about 65 years in Western Washington. So you have 65-year window providing, you know, seasonal shading for the stream, non-significant large woody debris, all that stuff factors into it. So the quicker you get it to, you know, coniferous trees, the better situation. But the interesting thing we do is that, you know, sale we sold back in March, I believe, sold for like $1.1 million. But anyways, we added 4.7 acres of RFRS, and you kind of see it right here. So we took the RMZ all the way down to 25 feet on this type 3 water. About 4.7 acres, and we removed 123 MBF of red alder, sold at auction using our stumpage valuation for the overall sale. That 123 MBF resulted in $48,000, just trusting the beneficiaries. And we treated about 3,000 linear feet of grade arts. It's watershed and kayak county. It's just the kayak county trust 35% of this 1.2, so straight into the kayak taxing district. So school or if you're in a private forest practice alternate plans, you're allowed to do a riparian restoration like this with the right alternate plan. DNR's HCP, you can't reference it, but you can use it as a reference when writing your own description. But I encourage you to look it up. It's also available in small forest landowner portal here. Everything we talked about today, with the exception of the master logger program, is found somewhere in here. You can navigate yourself to just about anything on this, and came out, I think, at the beginning of the year. It's really a great resource. Again, my log marketing stuff is found in here. Log price surveys are found here, and it's highly encourage everyone to take a peek at that when you get a chance. But anyways, that's all I got. Sorry, it was kind of quick and lengthy. This is my contact information. I am a public resource now. And I have no problem sharing the ugly truth of what actually happens with wood products. And again, I stress the healthy skepticism that we all should carry, and we should encourage landowners to have, with the understanding that their logs are worth more often. So, yeah. Yeah.
But then there's the shared.
So you can see, I don't know, high level, DNR sells DNR timber sale packages, contracts every month. They're typically between 2 million board feet to 10 million board feet. So this was a part of a larger timber sale. And so DNR would think uplands. So upland timber sale would be everything outside of the riparian management zones in Western Washington. This would be within the riparian management zone. So it's in addition to upland volume. So this is just backing out what the overall sale was. I think this overall sale sold for $1.8 million, but my specific RFR estimate that we added to this netted about $50,000 for the state. Yeah. 100%. This was with Cowlton County Trust 35. It's probably DNR's most endangered or critical trust we operate under. It pretty much owns that whole county. Yeah.
It's here. And this looks in, so what we should tell them when you're speaking is the easiest to sell dimensions for, yeah, what they should be to get to.
Yeah, so all those fairly stable. For as many, a lot of manufacturers do Douglas fir, but all there's not really two companies that operate 3 different mills across 4 different mills across Washington. It's one in Chehalis, one in Centralia, and then 4 others. So if you're not in those areas, proximity wise, it's going to be hard to get to them. But all that really becomes work when you need 12-inch plus diameter. So that really mature stuff, too right. Like I said before, there's a pioneering species about 65 years of age. It's declining very quickly. You get red heart stain, that kind of stuff. So a 12-inch old is typically if you have a standard 12-inch, it's worth. These prices would be vastly underrated. If you could sell a 12-inch old, it's $1,000. Good. But in the scheme of things, it's fairly flat. In the scheme of things, 500 to high 700 is pretty good ballpark number. But again, all those, not a very big log. It takes a lot of them to make a truck roll. 16-inch Doug fir, 20 a truck, maybe 100 to do all this. Yeah.
Then considering if we should maybe they have, I would come into the.
I mean, although seasonality, I would highly encourage them to log it in the middle of winter because it's when all the least available. It's like logging all the time is a bad idea because everyone's logging right now. So it's very seasonal. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a threshold of what's feasible and what's not. It boils back to the whole stumpage evaluation. It doesn't pay as a pencil to do it. But all those really interesting, get into really specialty markets. If you have 12-inch plus stuff, there's guys that buy veneer quality. By previous employer, I was buying all their, Chehalis, Washington, put flatbeds all the way to Indianapolis, just so they could cut veneer out of it and then ship it all the way back to us from Washington. So they can put it into veneer plywood. Then could be made into a cabinet that makes it look like an oak cabinet or something, but really it's just all their skin. So all those really interesting species for sure.
So a 12-inch alder, at a 40-foot high, narrow end, how big is it that the trunk is?
Alder, it's got a pretty good form, and cruiser, that isn't the main job here, but a 12-inch alder is typically a shorter log. You're going to cut like a 16 or 20-foot log off the butt, and you're going to have it just to capitalize on its scale. we have to include that 12-inch log into the 8-inch log, at 40 foot. So yes, again, playing that game of long logs versus short logs and scale and pay them. So, yeah.
It's very curveball, so let's say it's bigger,
Yeah.
how would you put how you get it smaller, a smaller number involved? Because there's no official value.
Yeah, so then it's sky's the limit with that stuff. I mean, and the top pays thousands of dollars for a tiny little block of that. So, you know, it's really hard, but the problem with doing that and what I would be hesitant with landowners is, yeah, you can pull that kind of stuff out, but to do that, they're going to just chase out of logs and they're going to dice it. Say you have a whole tree, they're going to take little tiny little sections. Now that whole tree is gone. So you can't just sell it. You just kind of took the cream out of it, right? Sell it as a whole log. But these hardwood mills, they do all pull that out and cutting boards and stuff, and they resell that stuff all day. Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on what a log buyer does for a mill and like how a landowner should be talking to them if they want to
Yeah,
sell?
so kind of back into the whole process, I would encourage you to do your research. You know, there's kind of two routes. Do your research, do your permit. You know, you can either find a contractor via Washington Contract Logger Association, or directly to the mill. Say you live in Elmo, Washington, and Murphy Veneers right down the road. You could, you know, all along there, you could do it that way. You get the price direct from the source rather than go through a contract, which is a great route. Typically, these guys are buying much larger quantities of logs. When you're talking five loads, 3 loads, they're not interested in coming out and doing it. It's not worth their time, unfortunately. But so that's why contractor is typically the route it goes, because those people are constantly selling logs, so they constantly have those relationships going with log buyers. But log buyers are it's a really small network of people actually. So you have Sierra Pacific and Shelton, for example. Like I said, they use 120 loads a day. There's 2 guys that source that wood for the entire, that, you know, employs 350 people and runs 365 days a year. So it's really small group of people. And if you're not in the know, it's hard to evaluate it. And that's why these publicly available resources like my price survey is a great resource for
You do surveys. Percentage.
Yeah, so I mean, trucking costs is high for, again, I didn't put a number on it on this because it's way too hard to estimate. I mean, Eastern Washington, they're paid way less over here than there. Eastern Washington, just, you know, for sheer operating costs, you know, realistically. But again, your $1,000 a day I referenced is a really good number to go off of, and something to keep in your back of your mind if you're ever negotiating with a contractor. And typically landowners don't talk to the truck drivers. The logger have the trucks or have the, you know, the trucking capacity to do it, and that rate is separate. Then go into logging splits and stuff, and how things are paid, but you know, as a landowner, wow, I don't want to pay all these people with money. You don't have to. How it works is when you set up these purchase orders with mills, the mill will make a split. So say the trucking is $100 a load, that log truck driver gets a check in the mail from the mill. And then say you and the landowner, you and the logger split, you know, 50-50 the rest of the value. You each get separate checks. So there's no transaction between contractors and landowners. Truck drivers, typically the mills handle that with the logging chemical systems. But way too highly variable to estimate in COVID diesel prices. I mean, it's just been sky's the limit on that stuff right now. 100% increases in the last 2 years just for sheer trucking capacity, you know, like anything. But yeah, so more questions?
I have an off the wall one.
Okay.
I had a harvest in my property.
Mhm.
They said, oh, there's a dead cedar here.
Yeah.
I said, but I'll tell you what, it has some value. I'm gonna remove it and charge you nothing. And I'll get the value of the tree. I'm like, dead tree, is that really valuable?
Yeah, I mean, cedar holds its value forever. We sell DNR cedar salvage and some old growth cedar stumps in the coast of Washington that sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. If that stuff's 100 years old and it's been dead for years. So cedar doesn't really decay like other species, but that's a very common situation when you hire an arborist and they charge you $10,000 to remove a tree. It was actually in my front yard, buddy of say he says, I'll do it for $10,000 or some crazy number, which those guys usually throw out. And then he takes the log away. Well, he's got a pile of those logs, some on the side. So it's like I said, there's value in it besides fun that most people think when they do those arborist jobs, and there is value in it. The problem with arborist jobs is typically they cut them in short lengths. Short lengths are hard to remove. If it's not 16 foot, your odds are it's not going to be able to be sold. So yeah, one more.
If you take trees down with 175 permanent structure, don't permit. But the mills may not take that lumber because they're just taking your. But if they did, then you would pay a forest tax, you would pay the excise tax.
Correct. Always going to pay tax. Unfortunately, can't get away from that. But yeah, DNR will not issue. It's just for a few trees right around the house, but they will issue a permit for, say, your 5-acre property. But this stipulation is going to be written on the notice, which pretty much dictates that they're not giving the green stamp to those trees around your house. Again, counties manage that. I know I live in Thurston County, so it's just a quick parcel search on the GIS if it's critical area. Yeah, mills, like I said earlier, contrary to mills don't just buy it, it shows up. They have to have the paperwork that backs it. Who will make sure it's not there. If you want a civil board, SFI or FSC certificate associated with it, and are subject to comments where they're constantly people checking their records where the log's coming from, what FPA permit was it from? Let's go look at it. I don't believe it. That kind of stuff. It's really high scrutiny and really highlights the wood products industry in Washington and why even myself don't like seeing 200-acre clear cuts, but if it's not done here in Washington under the most strict rules known to man, it's going to be done somewhere else and under probably less strict scrutiny because that demand is still going to be there.
Is the same scrutiny given to export logs?
Yeah, I didn't get into export. They do have similar scrutiny, but it is far less. So and it is a huge market, big money in that, highly volatile, plays really into the domestic market. If Japan needs 4 or 5 ships of 12-inch quality J-sort logs into Olympia, the market in Western Washington just went through the roof because everyone's log availability for domestic nodes just went way down. It's all. I didn't get into that, but you're absolutely right. I'm not a proponent of export, obviously, but for the state, fun fact, DNR would, if you ever see red paint on the highway on the back of a log truck, that's from the DNR timber sale. And it's not only exportable. You see yellow, it's from the Forest Service, so yellow number federal, and also export. So interesting little thing, but yeah. That was it. More?
And for future land structures or like, I'm just thinking.
Yes.
Everybody has trees.
Yeah, and it really depends on the county. Thurston County, I mean, this is straight from Thurston County website, right? Wow, it's not what, so they don't say the value of that structure. I know Mason County, if you're in Mason County, they actually feel like it's all value. I think it's anything over $1,000 is deemed a permanent structure. So that could be a lot of things, chicken coop, fan, I mean, anything. So yeah, it's very flexible, but again, it's kind of the gray area. Like forest practice permit's always best, but that's not always the case with small forest owners. So, yeah,